The acrid stench of burning flesh still haunts my dreams. Even now, as I kneel before the altar in mock prayer, I can smell it. That sweet, sickening odor that clung to the air the day they burned my family. I, Alessandra Ricci, daughter of the noble house of Ricci, watched from the shadows as flames consumed everything I loved. They thought a girl of 16 would be too weak to seek vengeance. They were wrong. The convent's stone walls press close around me, cold and damp like a tomb. My black novice's habit scratches against my skin, a constant reminder of the role I play. Sister Alessandra, they call me. Pious, humble, devoted. If only they knew how I spend my nights studying the ancient texts of poisons, how I practice with my blade in the moonlight that filters through my cell's narrow window. Mother Superior passes behind me, her footsteps echoing off the chapel's vaulted ceiling. I bow my head deeper, fingers working the rosary beads while my mind calculates which poison would best suit her eventual death. Not yet. She is not my target. But her presence reminds me of the day she welcomed me into this sanctuary, a poor orphaned noble girl seeking God's comfort. The irony of finding refuge among his servants while plotting murder brings a smile to my lips that I quickly hide behind my veil. In the garden, where I tend the herbs for the infirmary, Vecchia Maria watches me with knowing eyes. The ancient herbalist recognized something in me the day I arrived, perhaps the same darkness that lives in her own heart. Some plants heal, she had whispered, gnarled fingers brushing against deadly nightshade. Others deliver justice. Under her tutelage, I've learned to extract death from the most innocent blooms, to distill suffering into drops that leave no trace. Tonight, I prepare for my first kill. Bishop Romano will receive his divine punishment during tomorrow's Mass. The poison is already in place, carefully painted onto the rim of his personal chalice. It will begin slowly, a tightening in his chest, perhaps blamed on the summer heat. Then the bleeding will start, internal at first, until it forces its way up his throat. They will watch in horror as God's representative drowns in his own blood before their eyes. I should feel something. Fear, perhaps, or guilt. Instead, I find myself anticipating the spectacle with an artist's excitement. Each death I plan is a masterpiece, a performance that must be perfect. This is not mere revenge. It is transformation of pain into power. The next morning dawns gray and heavy with storm clouds. Perfect. Let nature mirror the darkness to come. I take my place among the other novices, head bowed, hands folded. Bishop Romano sweeps past us, resplendent in his ceremonial robes. The same robes he wore when he declared my family heretics. The same lips that condemned them now touch the poisoned chalice. His death is everything I hoped for. The confusion as he clutches his chest. The horror as blood begins to trickle from his nose, then his mouth. The screams as he collapses, scarlet spreading across the white marble floor like a blooming rose. In the chaos that follows, no one notices my satisfied smile. More deaths follow, each more elaborate than the last. Counselor Vincenzo, who signed my father's death warrant, found twisted in prayer before the Virgin Mary, his body contorted by a toxin that forces the muscles to contract until bones snap. The captain of the guard who dragged my sisters to the pyre, discovered in his bed, skin blackened and bubbled as if he'd been burned from the inside out. With each kill, I feel myself changing. The nightmares of burning flesh fade, replaced by dreams of power. I stand before my mirror at night, watching my reflection. My face has grown sharper, harder, my eyes darker. Or perhaps it's just the weight of what I've become, pressing against my skin like a mask I can never remove. The other sisters whisper about God's judgment falling upon the wicked. If only they knew their gentle sister Alessandra was God's instrument of vengeance. Some nights, in the silence of my cell, I wonder if they're right, if I am indeed doing God's work. But then I remember my mother's screams, my sister's tears, and I know this is my own justice I deliver. It's during confession that my carefully constructed world begins to crack. Father Benedetto, my confessor since I arrived, listens to my fabricated sins with unusual attention. "My child," he says, his voice carrying an edge I've never heard before, "do you know why I requested to be your confessor?" The question sends ice through my veins. He continues before I can respond. "I recognized something in you the day you arrived. The same thing I saw in your father's eyes years ago. The mark of the assassins." My blood runs cold. Father Benedetto laughs softly, the sound like steel against stone. "Did you think your family's execution was about heresy? We knew what you were, what you all were. The church has been hunting your kind for centuries." In that moment, everything shifts. The confessor's booth becomes a trap, the screen between us a barrier too thin to protect either of us. I reach for the knife hidden in my habit, but his next words freeze me in place. "I orchestrated every detail of their deaths, watched as the flames purified their assassin blood, and I've been watching you, Alessandra, waiting to see if you would reveal yourself. The rage that fills me is different from anything I've felt before. Not the cold, calculating anger that has driven me these past months, but something primal. Something that demands more than a quick death. He deserves something special. Something worthy of the architect of my family's destruction. It takes me 2 weeks to prepare. 2 weeks of grinding herbs, distilling tinctures, testing combinations on rats in the convent cellars. The final poison is my masterpiece. A combination that paralyzes without dulling sensation, that preserves consciousness while rendering the victim unable to move or speak. Father Benedetto takes his last confession on a cold autumn evening. The poison is on my lips when I kiss his ring, an act of false piety that seals his fate. I watch as realization dawns in his eyes, as his limbs grow heavy and unresponsive. "Can you feel it, Father?" I whisper as he slumps in his chair. "The way your body betrays you becomes a prison? Don't worry, your mind will stay sharp. You'll want to be awake for what comes next." The old monastery walls hide many secrets, including a section of the catacombs where a new wall needs repair. It takes me all night to brick him in, working by candlelight, watching his eyes follow my every movement. I make sure to leave a small gap at first, so he can see the mortar drying, understand the permanence of his fate. "This is my confession, Father," I tell him as I prepare to lay the final brick. "I am Alessandra Ricci, daughter of assassins, and I am my family's vengeance." The last brick slides into place with a soft scrape. In the darkness beyond, I know he remains conscious, silently screaming, unable to move. He will stay that way for days, perhaps weeks, before his body finally surrenders. Every second will be agony, every moment an eternity of suffering. As I walk away, my footsteps echoing through the catacombs, I feel something close to peace. But beneath it lurks a darker emotion. Pleasure. Pure, intoxicating pleasure at the artistry of my revenge. I have become something my enemies never expected. Not just an assassin, but an artist of death. The morning bell rings, calling us to prayer. I take my place among the sisters, head bowed, hands folded. They will search for Father Benedetto, of course. They will wonder and worry, but they will find nothing, and I will continue my work, delivering justice from the shadows, one masterpiece at a time. After all, there are still so many sinners in Florence who deserve God's judgment, and I have so many new poisons to perfect.